However, a lot of customization and modularity isn't good if it doesn't actually do what it needs to do, which is a concealment holster. There are a ton of different EDC holsters out there, a ton of different holster companies, especially in that sidecar style. It has become super popular because who doesn't want to have both a gun and a spare magazine? A company that I recently found and sent me one of their holsters is Slim Fit Holsters. This is their brand new Carnex holster. It just released. I have had this now for a few months as this was a prototype, and I got a chance to run it and give feedback to Slim Fit Holsters. So the quick rundown on this holster, it is a sidecar style holster. It holds your gun. I have a Glock 17 Gen 6 in here that I've been carrying quite a bit, and it has your spare magazine. The spare magazine being an extended spare magazine, and it fits in here no problemo. Now, the way this works is it has this little Tegris bridge right here that attaches the spare magazine carrier to the holster itself. However, it's not just a spare magazine carrier, as you can mount any kydex accessory you want here. You just unscrew these two holes and you can put a knife holder, a tourniquet holder, a pepper spray holder, a spare AR magazine. Hell, you could put another holster here if you really wanted to and carry your backup gun there. That is the option that this holster gives you. It also gives you quite the range of adjustment where you can loosen these screws here and you can have a ton of holster adjustment. I can go straight up and down, get a vertical draw if that's what I prefer, or I can have some super ridiculous, crazy canted draw here and get one of those almost competition-esque draws. And that's the thing this holster does so well, is its modularity. Not only its modularity in the angle of your magazine carrier, but the modularity in what you can carry with it as well. You can even, if you want, remove this all together and just run it as a standalone holster if your mission or your experience requires that. But the fact it has that customization really sells the holster for me. However, a lot of customization and modularity isn't good if it doesn't actually do what it needs to do, which is a concealment holster. So how does this conceal the gun? Well, it conceals the gun very, very well. Not just the gun, but the magazine too. For the gun, you have one of these generic claws. You see this on tons of different holsters out there, and I'll talk about this in the negatives in a little bit. But you also have a little claw for the magazine. You have this little spacer here. In fact, it includes two in the box, so you can even stack it and really push that magazine in. I find just one spacer works just fine. I don't need two of them. Two of them made it almost impossible to take the holster on and off, to be honest. But one spacer pushes the magazine in and helps both the magazine and the gun conceal. Something else it has to aid in concealment is this wedge right here. It makes it more comfortable and more concealable. And it's Velcro, meaning you can pop that right off and exchange it for a different size it comes with. It comes with a small and a large. The small one for me is okay. It helps a little bit of comfort and concealment, but unless you're a really slim dude, I'd recommend the larger wedge. Pops on there, no problem, fits really nicely, and it's free included in the box. Other companies out there like Tier 1 Concealed also have wedges. However, these wedges are stuck on there, so they're stick on and that's it. You can't take it off or exchange it for different sizes if you want. You're gonna have to peel this off and clean off the kydex, and it's a pain. And you have to pay extra for these. They're not included in the box. So this wedge system from Slim Fit Holsters not only is very economical because it's included in the box and has multiple sizes, but it aids in concealment because it pushes the gun, the muzzle of the gun out and the grip of the gun in, meaning this gun is going to conceal way better on you than without that wedge, and it's going to be a heck of a lot more comfortable. So just the basics of the holster itself, the design, it's a very well designed holster. You have very nice contours. It's clearly formed around the gun. You don't have a bunch of extra material. Any extra material like this piece here is designed to do something, which is this little bridge piece out of Tegris. Your spare magazine is built really well. It does have holes on the opposite side, so I'm assuming for this is for left-handed people, so it can be swapped. Or I guess if you want to swap your magazine, if you're someone who wants to carry bullets facing out, but even then you can actually just run that without having to swap the magazine over, so I'm assuming it's just for lefties, making it a little more of a universal design. But you can also adjust the ride height as you have that same amount of screw pattern there. It's on the other side, so if you want this magazine to sit higher up or you want to give it some weird angle, you're able to do so. This holster is also very evenly priced. It is very similar to companies like TRX Arms, Tier 1 Concealed, A&R Designs, all those other big prominent holster companies. This has the exact same sort of pricing. Lead times are not crazy or anything, and you're getting very similar quality. So in terms of what you're getting bang for your buck, this is definitely on par with the other offerings on the market. Now, getting into the cons, the first is going to be back to its adjustability. Yes, this holster is very adjustable in some ways, like magazine cant and magazine orientation and what sort of accessories you can run here. However, it doesn't have a whole lot of height adjustment. I can adjust the height of my magazine, sure, but I'd only have so much height adjustment for the holster itself, because there's only 2 holes on this version I have right here, meaning I only have the adjustment that's on the clip. It came with these plastic clips right here with these set holes to adjust it. Not a huge fan of these. I put on some discrete carry concept clips, but it has about the same range of adjustment. However, there's only 2 sets of holes to actually mount the clip to the holster, meaning the only adjustment you get is on the clip itself. Same with the claw. There is no adjustment on the claw, meaning if you run this holster in a configuration that drops the claw really low to the belt line or higher than the belt line, you are limited in terms of how much contact the claw is going to make with your belt line. There's no height adjustment here, and your tension adjustments are just right here with the claw itself. So not awful, not something really bad. Most companies are pretty much the same. However, there are companies out there like Tier 1 Concealed that has a claw that is both height adjustable, and you can even adjust the thickness of the claw itself, so it gives you a little bit more customization. Now, I will say, from seeing some later release photos and talking to slim fit holsters, as every critique I ever have of a product, I offer it to the manufacturer, especially if they send it to me. It does look like Slim Fit has taken that feedback into consideration, and they actually added additional holes now, so you have more adjustment. So if you have an early model, you may not have that. This was a prototype, so I don't know how long it took them to implement that. Looking at some of the newer released holsters, it looks like they implemented that, meaning you're going to get a little more adjustment in terms of your ride height. However, you still don't have a whole lot of adjustment with that claw. Probably my biggest issue I have with the holster is how the holster interferes with getting your grip on the gun. A lot of holsters out there are designed for just a standard pistol, so especially Glocks that get undercut, there's not a whole lot of space here. So if I take a stock Gen 5, you'll notice that the undercut is pretty much flush with the holster. It's pretty much in line. The holster does stick out just a teeny bit, but not enough to really interfere with building your grip. However, if you have a Gen 6 or you have an undercut pistol, it is going to interfere with your grip here. You're going to hit the holster far before you hit the undercut of your trigger guard. Not the end of the world. That is a pretty standard thing in the Glock world, where if you have an undercut or custom gun, you're going to have to possibly modify your holster for you to get a full perfect grip every time. But the biggest issue and the biggest offender is the sweat guard. This has a high sweat guard. I'm not a huge fan of those. I generally prefer a medium sweat guard, but that's not the end of the world that it's a higher sweat guard. What is a problem is how the sweat guard interferes with your grip, and I'll show you. So if I take something like this here, which is a Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 2.0 in a little cheapy Amazon holster I have for it, the sweat guard does not interfere with me forming my grip. I can form a full grip on the gun, get the gun out of the holster, and it doesn't prevent me from getting nice and high on the gun. And you can see, you can't see the sweat guard from the other side of the holster because there's more gun protruding than sweat guard. However, on the Slim Fit holsters Carnex, you do have an issue. This is a lot of sweat guard here that covers up the gun itself. And if I flip it over, you can actually see some of that sweat guard here carrying over. Meaning when I get on the gun, I'm actually being forced down so I can't get a full high grip, and I'm actually pushed down from the beaver tail a little bit. So when I'm drawing, I have to actually fix my grip as I'm coming out, or fix my grip after I fired my first couple shots, which did happen to me a few times when I ran this holster in an IDPA competition. Comparing it to this Tier 1 Concealed Axis Elite, not only does the sweat guard not interfere at all, but you also have full access under my trigger guard, even with an undercut custom Glock. And if I take that stock Gen 5 and throw it in here, you still have that same issue where you can see that sweat guard from the other side, meaning it's protruding and interfering with forming your full and proper grip on the gun. It's getting in there, so that way when I'm coming out, I'm not getting a good grip, and I do have a little bit of a gap between the top of my hand and the beaver tail. It's not the end of the world, and it's not something that a few minutes of a Dremel can't fix. However, that shouldn't be happening out of the box. I can understand the trigger guard area, because like I said, on a stock Glock, it only interferes a teeny bit. It's not a huge issue. It still is a little more than it needs to be. But this extended sweat guard thing, this needs to be cut down. This needs to be reduced, because this gets in the way of my grip. This gets in the way of my draw, and it's not something that's conducive to performance shooting. All right, so that was the Slim Fit holsters Carnex. Like I said, this was sent to me, but obviously that does not mean I held anything back. When it comes to that issue with the sweat guard and the trigger guard, those are probably my two biggest problems with the holster. Adjustment-wise, while it is limited, it's not a big problem for me because I have it pretty much how I want it. But if you want the gun to sit lower or you want the claw to sit differently, you don't have that option. So if you're someone out there wants the gun really low or really high, you may not be able to get it exactly how you want it. Ultimately, I could solve these problems with just a Dremel going in there, cleaning this up and cleaning that up, but also customers shouldn't have to do that with their holster out of the box, especially with what's now a stock gun with the Gen 6. However, like I said earlier, Slim Fit Holsters was receptive to my feedback. I provided them feedback, and it seems like they've been implementing it. And I, of course, gave them this feedback as well. So hopefully they'll be implementing this feedback, especially on the Glock pistols and any other pistols out there, reducing that extended sweat guard so that way it does not interfere with forming your grip, and perhaps relieving the undercut a little bit more, so once again, it doesn't interfere with your grip. All right, guys, if you liked the video, if you liked seeing my take on a different option and offering out there, instead of just going back to Tier 1 concealed, go ahead, leave a like down below. If you are a huge Tier 1 concealed or TRX Arms or whatever other holster company fanboy, then go ahead, leave a dislike down below. Otherwise, guys, head in the comments. What holster do you carry every day? Have you ran or heard of Slim Fit holsters? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, guys, I'm releasing new videos every Saturday. Subscribe and stay tuned.